Hello everybody, this is Metallic Penguin, or at least I go by Metallic Penguin on the internet. A few days ago, the US banned all foreign-made routers over national security concerns. This might sound innocuous enough, except that the only company that makes routers in the United States is Starlink. Starlink manufactures their routers in Texas. Starlink is owned and operated by one Mr. Elon Musk. Elon Musk has a history of turning off the internet to parties he doesn't like. He has a history of personalizing politics to a degree that I don't think we've seen before, at least, in my lifetime. Effectively, this monopoly would also mean that not only would he be essentially in charge of your data, but he would also be in charge of the flow of your data. One user said that he routinely gets 30 Mbps download, and more often than not it's 15. 15 Mbps would make it really hard to say send video or to even watch video. You could say goodbye to your live streaming over there on Twitch or YouTube, etc. And again, this, to be clear, like everybody says, the routers you have in your house now are fine, but eventually supply chain concerns are going to dictate that Starlink is the only router available at Best Buy. Also, many users have reported that your larger houses are just not adequately covered by Starlink. But again, all this pales in comparison to the fact that, frankly, Starlink is going to be a monopoly. And yeah, okay, in theory, you're going to have other companies are going to be able to step in. But what in the world would be the lead time for something like that? I mean, this is just a real worry. And also, when you think about it, having all the nation's data essentially on a single corporate choke point is a really, really terrible idea for security, to say nothing of freedom of expression or, freedom of speech, etc. Just plain security is just a really bad idea. Elon Musk has had many well-documented, not so great run-ins with the idea of the free and open internet. And, I would like to point out that he became a billionaire because of government handouts. He became a billionaire because of we the people. Why does all that matter? Because, frankly, we the people financed all this, and we're still continuing to finance it with this executive order. And it's like, I would like to go back to the days of something approximating the Wild West internet. I realize that's kind of a pipe dream, but at the very least, I would like to not have an inferior router that has basically one massive security choke point and makes us all very, very unsafe. Interestingly, Musk's companies are becoming increasingly intertwined. Some analysts say that this is because he wants to be able to share costs and resources as seamlessly as possible between all the companies. One of the concerns I think that we all need to have is, like, for example, when you have one router in the country, which in a few years, because the lifespan of a router is maybe 5 years. So if they don't overturn this executive order, which, let's say they don't, Okay, let's say that when that happens, you have one router which has one set of vulnerabilities, which increasingly people, entities will plan for. And does that concern me? Yes. And I think that's a nonpartisan concern, or at least it should be. Also, I kind of think it sort of sits in the broader situation of like how big tech just sort of wants to control you. They want to control what you think, what you see, what you feel. And I just don't like that. That's one of the reasons I went to Linux. It's the reason I encourage people, as we say in the real world, to go to Linux. Do I think there's a possibility? I mean, true enough, the executive order does actually leave the door open for companies to come in to the United States and design and build their routers here, and that might happen. But the lead time on that is a long time. And also, from the perspective of a multinational corporation, the United States is what, 5% of the world's population? How many of that population has a router at home? Just out of curiosity. For example, in retrospect, I remember Snowden saying that he grew up in the day and age of the free and open internet, and he saw that disappearing. And that was over 10 years ago at this point. A long time ago when he gave that famous interview that was put into a documentary. And at the time, I remember thinking that was very overblown and, whatever. But now, with all the age verification stuff and all the soon we're only going to have one router unless major corporate changes happen, which, they might. Believe it or not, I'm an optimist. But now I kind of see it. I kind of see this enclosure movement creeping up on the internet. One thing to think about for sure is with Google's pivot to AI and how they essentially did away with, small website SEO. People are going to fewer and fewer websites. And smaller websites are basically dying to the point that, people can't afford, people don't see the reason to continue to pay their hosting fees at companies like Hostinger and like that. And I'm just kind of wondering, like, are we just going to be sitting around looking at the same 6 websites on the same router? And like, if you type something in a chat room somewhere, are they going to just shut off your router and say, "Oh, I'm sorry," the reason I'm making all this and the reason I'm talking about this is because this is not the future I want to live in. And I want to educate as many people as I can about what's going on. Anyway, do you guys think I'm just a quack on the internet? Talk about it below in the comments. I hope Netgear and the other router companies can give Starlink a run for their money. I hope they bring, factories to the U.S. and build their routers here. And, I sure hope so. But anyway, don't forget to give a like, share, and a comment. And give me a subscribe. And like I always say, you're lapping everybody on the couch. Okay, if you think this is an overblown situation, go ahead and talk about it in the comments. Okay, folks. Like I just told you, you're lapping everybody on the couch. you guys later.